Good evening, my dear friends. I'd like to start off this evening by talking about what we gained from this class and from this book, You Are the Placebo. It's been more than 12 weeks because we took time off for Christmas and Thanksgiving, I think. No, well, that's not true. We didn't take off time for Thanksgiving, but certainly for Christmas and the holidays. But it's been my pleasure to be with you every step of the way. And I have felt your growth, and I also have grown. As we go back over what we learned, Dr. Joe started off with some beautiful healing stories, stories of miracles, stories of people who had, to some degree, so-called incurable diseases that were cured through the placebos. And he talked about how placebos work sometimes miraculously, even when people know they're placebos, how the soldiers in the war, when they ran out of morphine, were injected with saline and got the same results. People taking a little pill that they were already told it was a placebo, and still they got great results. What he proved to us, chapter after chapter, is that the mind is in charge of the body. But we have to be in charge of the mind. And we are not the mind. We are not our brains. We are not our bodies. We are eternal, spiritual beings, all wise, all powerful, incarnations of the one great creative mind. Each of us carrying the total value of that wonderful, wonderful presence. But here we are as earthlings with our frailties and with our moods and our attitudes and our belief systems. And we're infecting our bodies and our genetics, our DNA, our cells with a lot of attitudes and a lot of beliefs that are, pardon my saying so, just lazy thinking. Just lazy thinking. If someone said to you, I want you to paint this barn, you'd have to really do a lot of work to get that barn painted, or to build a house, or even to bake a cake from scratch. You'd have to think about it. You'd have to get the ingredients. You'd really have to work at it. We don't work at our minds. We just let them do whatever they want. So they go into our subconscious memories and drag up all kinds of old stuff and make us believe that we are that stuff. And then we defend it. And we pretend to be something that we're not. Our genetics are flexible. You can't say, I have XYZ disease because my grandmother and grandfather had it, or my mother and grandmother had it. It's true, you may be more susceptible to that, but your mind is powerful enough to override those genetics and create new genetics. We've learned that in these weeks together, in these months together. And we cannot afford to be lazy. We cannot afford to think lazy, because we are here with opportunity to create miracles. We dream of miracles. We dream of magnificent, beautiful, wonderful lives. But most often, we don't dare live them. because our subconscious minds, our memories, deny us access, saying, no, you're not worthy of that. No, you can't do that. No, you're not smart enough. You're too fat, too skinny, too tall, too short. You're a woman instead of man. You're homosexual instead of heterosexual. You're black instead of white, or white instead of brown, or what. There's always some excuse, and they're all excuses. All of them are excuses. What we learned in this book is that you have to really apply yourself. What we learned in this book is that the miracle of enlightenment, of living an enlightened life, feeling the joyous heartbeat of the one great God inside of you day and night, is worth the fight, worth the climbing of the mountain, worth the failures, worth working through the self-doubts. Every moment, every step, becoming more self-confident. Every step, receiving more grace and more spiritual power. Dr. Joe talked to us about being suggestible. He said that unless you're suggestible, this book and this course is pretty much a waste of time. Because suggestible means that you're willing to shut down your beliefs and your attitudes and your opinions long enough for a new reality, a new truth to come in and replace those. To be suggestible, to be able to be hypnotized, maybe not by a hypnotist, but by yourself, you, the spiritual self. To be able to pull apart from your mind, pull apart from your body and brain. A few moments ago, we went into a meditation and we went into our higher minds. That's the place from which you can change this temporal life and this body. That's the place from which you can send the placebo thoughts and the placebo consciousness. And Dr. Joe talked to us about the quantum, which was so important. Because in the quantum reality, we know now that there are particles and that there are waves. And we know that the universe is all waves until someone notices, and then it becomes a particle. When you observe it, it becomes a particle. And we know that the camera that you're looking at, or the screen you're looking at, or the table that your hand is resting on right now is made up of 99.99999999999% space. But it's not empty space. It's filled with Holy Spirit. It's filled with God. It's filled with the mind. And you are space. You are that mind. You are that grace. We take our dog for a walk, and maybe we have our dog on the leash. And we don't take it off the leash because we know that this dog will run out in traffic or take off across the park and we'll have to chase it. We may never get to it. We know that, so we keep our dog on the leash. We don't keep our minds on a leash. We don't say to our minds, think this way. No, we're not doing that. We're not going into those negative fantasies now. No, we're not doing anger and resentment, and we're not doing revenge. We're not doing those things. We're love and joy. We're love and joy. That's where we're going. focused mind, focus on love and joy. See that person over there? You said, look at her. She's so fat. She must just eat all the time. Now, what? Just change that. Look at that over there. That's me in a different incarnation. God bless her. I don't live her life, but she's doing the best she can with what she's got right now. Bless her. I send her my healing energy. We have to train our minds. And until they're trained, we need to keep them on a leash. So the final thing, and you'll find this in almost every one of Joe's books, is meditation. Because what Joe has shown us and what he's proved with tens of thousands of students around the world, and those students have been on brain scans and different kind of monitors and energy scans, and the scientists that have worked with Joe and Joe have learned amazing things about what happens when, number one, you learn the truth about who you are, about your genetics, about your brain and your body, your mind, your thoughts, your feelings, your ability to be suggestible, your ability, you as a part of the quantum, part of the great field. And you learn those things, and then that enables you to stop analyzing everything. Get the analyzations out of the way, the analytics out of the way, and meditate. And when you go into that abyss, into that void, into that magical, magical place where there's no thought, there's no sense of self, you are just hanging in pure bliss and in pure, pure, pure spirit. Then your mind changes, because now the ego and that part of your consciousness no longer says, this is important, and this is important, and this is important, and this is valuable, and this is valuable, and I must do this, and I must do that. Oh my gosh, I'm late, and I got to get here, and I got to get there. It stops doing that, and it said, you know what? None of that really matters. I'll do my best in that temporal world, but that's not who I am. I'm eternal. In my work, I take people, usually every year, I didn't this year, usually every year I take a group of people that are advanced students into the wilderness on a spirit quest. And what they do on the spirit quest, we work together for several days, maybe 5 or 10 days, meditating, talking, working through problems, getting a vision of who we are and who we want to be. And then on a certain morning, they all go out. They go out in different directions, into the forest or into the desert, or we did it in Molokai. They went off into the island forest, and in Japan, and up on Mount Fuji, and down in Latin America on the Baja Peninsula, and in Arizona, in different places. And they go out and they walk and they listen. I just want to tell you how this works, because it works with what we're doing here. They walk until they know that there's nobody else around, because they're going in different directions and they're completely in the wilderness. And when they know that they are not going to see anyone else, that absolutely won't happen, they take off all their clothes, naked. They stick their clothes in a backpack. And then in the backpack, they've got 3 pieces of dried fruit, which doesn't do anything except tantalize them, and a gallon of water. And they walk until they come to a place that feels like home. And I don't know whether you can get that. I've been doing these for so long that I don't know if I can communicate it real well, but I'm walking along on this one in the desert, and I'm walking by some cactuses, and there's a fox ahead of me over to my right. Well, if I keep walking in this direction, I'm going to pass about 10 feet from him. He's scurrying around looking for a mouse or something. He sees me and he looks up and he watches me, and then I keep walking, and then he looks back down what he's doing, and I walk by close enough to him, but he pays no attention to me because I don't have a lot of clothes on and I don't have a lot of attitude. I'm just another creature out here. I'm not a predator. I'm like a horse or a cow or a deer. I'm just another creature walking by. And in this one, I came to a little arroyo, which is in arroyo is a Spanish name for like a washout, where a ditch area where the water's washed out. And I said, this is it. This is my place. And I laid my sleeping bag down. And then I just sat down on my sleeping bag. And I looked, and just a little ways up the arroyo, there was a tree that was old, and the leaves that were all gone off of it. It's just a skeleton of a tree. And I thought it was beautiful against the sky. And I spent the day there. And then at night, toward evening, not night, but toward evening, I lay down. I pulled my sleeping bag over me and laid down. I was looking at the sky and watching the sky change. And down the arroyo comes a whole covey of quail, beautiful little birds. And they came down and they went right over the top of me, walked right over the top of me, and went over and climbed up in that tree and sat in the tree. And then they had a sentinel who was up in the top, who was always looking around. And then you go to sleep, and you go to sleep maybe, and when you go to sleep, you see that all the stars are like in this place. And then you wake up in the night, and the stars are over in this place. And then you wake up again, and they're over in this place. And you are part of the world. You're a part of the universe. You're part of everything, and you're naked. There's nothing between you and God. And in the morning, the quail all came back and ran over the top of me and went back out to do whatever they were going to do for the day. When people come back from a spirit quest, their lives are changed forever, because what they learned is who they are and who they are not. A woman was so frightened to go out, and I said, you don't have to go out. You can stay here and work with us, because we do things that support the people that have gone out. So she said, no, I'm going to go. I need to work through this. So we talked for a long time, and then she took her pack and her sleeping bag and she took off. Now you don't see anybody else, and there's no conversation, nothing, no radios, no phones, no books, nothing, just you. And she said, I went out and I lay down on my sleeping bag, and it was late afternoon, and I was just laying there thinking, what if this, and what if that, and what if something else? And she said, a little bird about the size of my thumb came down and landed on a branch just about 5 feet from my face. And I watched him. I watched how comfortable and how easy life was for him. And I thought, that little tiny bird trusts God. And everything's provided for him. And he's not afraid. And here I am, this big, strong person, and I'm laying here in fear. And she said, my fear evaporated, and I've never been afraid since. I had a beautiful night, beautiful day, another beautiful night, another beautiful day. The reason I tell you those stories is this. We haven't gone into the wilderness, but we've had the opportunity to have a spirit quest. We had an opportunity during our time together here to have a spirit quest, to go into a quest, to find out who we really are and who we really are not. And maybe we're not there yet, and that's okay. We're making progress. I can tell you this about enlightenment. Enlightenment is not a place. It's a path. And if you climb the mount called Mount Enlightenment, and you can see the top, but when you come up to the top, you can now see over the top that there's another top. When you get to that one, you'll see over the top of that one that there's another top. There's never a top. Enlightenment is a path, and you're on the path. And so maybe so far you didn't get as far as you wanted. Then want to be as far as you got. If you didn't get as far as you wanted, want to be as far as you've gotten. So I want to just be quiet now, and I want to hear some questions or some ideas or some thoughts that you've had this week or that you had in reading chapter 12. Or maybe you did as I asked and went online and followed that 30-minute meditation of Joe Dispenza's. I'd like for you to talk to us for a few minutes and let us know how that was for you and how this class is working for you. Just unmute yourself and go.
Bob? The question I have is, I listened to one of his meditations from the book a couple of times, and what really stumped me and it made it, I just didn't get it when he talks about the space that your nostril takes, and then he goes in space and everything's in space, and it just threw me, and I can't comprehend what that means and how I can apply that. Bob, you're muted. Bob, you're muted.
You start right off with a question that I almost wish no one would ask.
Too bad.
and that's because I personally have absolutely no idea what Dr. Joe's doing with that in space thing that he does.
I can tell you.
Please.
Okay, so the concept, because he does do exactly as Shirley says. He'll say, think of the volume of space that your leg is taking up in space. And what that is actually a method of invoking this thing called proprioception, which is the part of your brain that's responsible for sensing the presence of your body in literally of being in your body and where your arms are, where your hands are. And the theory behind it is that when you come in meditation to contemplate your body from outside the body, it sets the stage for you to enter into the larger mind. Does that make sense?
Thank you, Randy, because you answered a question that I personally hadn't been able to answer. And that's that I now understand, and surely I hope you do too, that when Joe says, focus on the space, he doesn't use these words, but the space between your temples or the space between your eyes, and then he says in space. What Randy so clearly just said is that means in space. So contemplate that in the larger space, in space itself.
Think of the size, volume, and density of your nose in space. In order to do that, you kind of have to get outside yourself. And so what he's really doing is sort of awakening the neurons that would be responsible for your connection with consciousness outside of yourself. You literally need to see your nose rather than from inside, sensing your nose. It's calling upon you to get a sense of that part of your body from outside yourself. And it's a fairly mystical premise. but there are others that use it. There's another meditation teacher, trying to remember his name. He does essentially the same thing through his meditations. And I've heard both of them explain it. And then I've heard a third yoga teacher talking about proprioception, and they do it in their yoga classes as well. And I have done it, and I can't say that I've had a profoundly mystical experience as a result of it, but I definitely feel that it develops a different sense of consciousness. It does take you to a different level.
Thank you, Randy. What a big help that is. Thank you, thank you. I love it that you jump in. That's just great. Does that make sense, Shirley? Good.
Now it's just applying it, and I think it has to take practice.
It does take
question.
practice.
Yeah.
It does take practice. I've been meditating for more than 50 years, and I've done so many different kinds of meditations. So doing Joe's meditation is quite different for me, and it does take practice, and it takes some focus on my part, because I would rather just go meditate the way I always meditate. But if I'm going to be teaching Joe's classes, then I should do his meditation at least some of the time. And what he's trying to do, and what he's very, very geniusly done, is he's created meditations that take what he's taught and put them into practicality. Thank you, Shirley. Someone else, please? Yes, Margaret.
I have a question for, am I muted? No, I have a question for the, that arose at the end of the last class that I've been wondering about all week. And it's something you said, Bob, at the end, which is, we were talking about how we can really be the placebo, and how we've come to the point of now understanding what that means and how to do it. And then you added as a little bit of a postscript, and these won't be your words, Bob, but I think I can capture. You said something like, and not all things that we hope for will be healed or can be healed. Sometimes, do you remember? I don't remember why you said it.
I do remember that, yes.
That really stuck with me, because I didn't want to hear that.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad you brought that. I'm so glad you brought that up. Thank you, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And this is rather metaphysical, but I'm glad you asked, because here's the thing. As I said, I believe I said this in the class and not in a Sunday service. I don't know, but we are rivers running from the mountains to the sacred sea. And in our paths, we wind back and forth. We run into rocks and boulders and mountains, and we keep getting bigger and bigger and growing. So life is not easy. It was not meant to be easy. Life is difficult. A lot of people don't like to hear that. I've said that in a lot of classes and a lot of places, and a lot of people have shaken their heads and said, no, you can't say that life is easy. Life is not difficult. They think that we're taking these classes so life will be easy. No, we're not. We're taking these classes so that we can be stronger relative to the difficulties. So in terms of healing all the things that need to be healed, if I have a neurological problem, and I have some sort of spasms that are quite painful, and I've been to doctors and they can't seem to find a way to heal these spasms, and so I just have to go through the spasms, and I have a lot of pain. Here's what's going on. If I'm the placebo, I don't have to be the pain. You are not your pain, ever, ever. So, and you're not your cancer, and you're not your disease, you're not your COVID, You're not any of that stuff. Those are the bumps. Those are the big rocks in the river. Those are the trees that have fallen in the water that the water has to rush over and around and by. You are the river. And these things are there, but they don't need to own you. They're there to grow us. We are the placebo, which means that there are a lot of things that we suffer from that are shame-based or guilt-based or unworthiness-based or revenge-based, that we have something against someone. When Jesus is at some point, someone was sick or hurt, I don't remember exactly what it was, and he said, your sins are forgiven. And the Pharisees are always watching him, and their little mouths are going, and they say, who do you think you are that you can heal someone or that you can forgive someone? And he said, what difference would it make whether I said you're healed or you're forgiven? It's the same thing. So when we are pure of spirit, when we know we're forgiven, when we know we are forgiven, and please, everyone in this class, please know that you are forgiven. There's nothing you have ever done or could do that isn't instantly forgiven. You are forgiven because you can't go on unless you're forgiven. So if you're forgiven and you still have rocks in the river and you still have bumps, they're all there for us to grow. But the difference is, and here's my point, taking a while to get to it, I apologize. But here's my point. If you have something that is not being healed, and you as the placebo are not healing it, and you've applied yourself and you've tried to heal it, and it isn't healing, then perhaps it's meant to be as a part of your river, as a part of your journey. But it's just a part. It's a tiny part of your journey. I know that sometimes it looks really severe, it looks enormous, but when the scientists went into the darkness of Africa, into some of the jungle communities where the pygmies and some of the deep tribes lived, they found all kinds of things. They found elephantitis, they found all kinds of diseases and all kinds of stuff, but the people just kept right on living. They didn't shrivel up and die, they just kept on living. We are so focused on curing everything that we don't stop to realize that that thing came to me. And maybe it came to me so that I would learn that it came to me because I have this darkness inside of me and I need to get the darkness out and get the light in so that will go away. Or maybe, like when I was a boy, I broke my arm, this arm, my right arm. And it was back in the dark ages where there were dinosaurs. And so they took me to a doctor and he put a washpan on my lap and told my stepdad to hold me. And then he pulled my arm out so the two bones would come back together. And then he splinted it. He put the washpan on my lap because he knew that I was going to be using it. And it didn't heal well. And then another doctor at a hospital rebroke it and set it again and put it in a cast. And when it came out of the cast, it was crooked. So I can't turn this hand upright. That's like that. That's my right hand. And I'm right-handed. So I have to eat left-handed. There's all kinds of things. But that's my path. That's my path. When I was young, I suffered from clinical depression, the worst kind of clinical depression. Really the worst, pure hell for years. And I now know that part of the reason that I have the channeling ability that I do is because I spent so much time in that darkness fighting my way out. So we're not supposed to heal everything through a placebo. We don't want to be a water pipe running straight to the sea. We want it to be a river. We want to have some pain. We want to have some disappointments and some ups and downs. Does that make sense, Margaret?
It does. That's beautiful. And I'm really grateful because I was hoping that you would say something that really touched my heart, and that really touches my heart.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will share.
Please.
And before I share my own experience, a little rock story. A friend of mine had an aunt tell him, he said he wanted to work with rocks and gems when he was older. And his aunt told him, you must have rocks in your head. And he became a gemologist and he went to Santa Rosa University. Jennifer, I'm becoming one with the universe wherever I am. I'm not sure what's happening to me, but I was walking at Houston Trail, which is near Fort Langley, up and down the hills, and I saw some frozen waters, what would have been, so it looked like glass, but there were patterns in the crystals. And it was a really beautiful experience. And I guess I was getting a lot of oxygen to my brain because I kept giggling with the person I was hiking with. And I just loved being out in nature. I said to my friend, I should have been a forest ranger or something. But I got the wrong book called The Placebo Effect, a different one. So I will get the one that we're doing. But I'm just becoming one with the universe. And anyways, I had a little skin condition happen lately I thought maybe because of all these hand sanitizers, like we're trying to keep clean, and I was getting this eczema on my fingers. Anyways, my doctor referred me to a GP near me that has skin specialty. And anyways, she took this beautiful cream and massaged my hands with it. And it was the love that the doctor was exchanging with me that seemed to settle my hands down. And she said, have you had any product around you lately that's different? And I said, well, maybe my cat's litter, it's clay. She goes, well, let's not blame it on the cat. She goes, I like cats. I said, me too. I have a ragdoll cat named Mocha. And so, but it was the exchange of her soothing me with this product that I bought, and it may help me, but the more I got fearful about the eczema and these cuts, the more I was getting distressed and, crying in pain. So I've decided to not wash my hands as much. But I could totally relate to your experience about being outdoors. When I was younger, I ventured down to Wreck Beach, but now that I'm a little older, I would be a little more self-conscious. But anyways, I love being out in nature. And I reached out and met one of the other participants in our program named Uta, and we had a nice cold walk yesterday, but I felt a warm feeling in my heart. And when I got back, I just want to share something. Someone started a fire in my building. We think it was a homeless person because of the video camera. Someone blamed teenagers. Everyone was willing to say who started it. But I had to gather my cat and get out of the buildings because I'm on the top floor. But I did get this innate adrenaline, like primal fear thing to look after my cat and myself. So it took me a while to calm down from it, but I do feel calm now. Yeah. But that
Now,
yes,
Jennifer, if that were to happen again,
yes.
exactly that way, would you feel the same adrenaline?
I would like to panic less. I would like to pray, and my cat got loose out of the carrier and she was running down the hallway. So actually what I did is I asked a neighbor to help me. So I joined with someone else. I said, could you help me get my cat? And so we've connected now. She's a Christian lady and we connected. But I felt upset with the person that did that to our building.
My question, though, is
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
Now that you've gone through that experience,
yes,
could you go through that experience again without it being quite so traumatic?
yes.
So you grew.
Yeah, I would like to panic less. And a lot of other people were less panicked. They didn't even think it was a real fire, but I got a message today that the people that sat in their condos should have left. But I would like to do it a little less traumatically next time. And I
And
was wondering,
I think you
can you walk through fire without being affected?
would. Yes, of course.
Well, what about long hair? I think I'll tie it back. So
But
you think you can go through fire without being affected?
I think it can be done. I'm not saying I can do it. I think
Yes,
it can be done.
yeah.
Jennifer, you might have to explain Wreck Beach.
It's a
That's about.
Wreck Beach is a nude beach near UBC. And I used to dance. I used to study quite a bit of dance. And I had friends that would go down there and do drumming, and we'd have potluck meals and so on. And nudity was more of a relaxation. Now that Wreck Beach is, they've gotten to the ego of it. And it was, some people have. But anyway, Wreck Beach is a nude beach we have here in Vancouver that I used to spend quite a bit of time dancing and swimming in the waves.
Sounds
Jennifer
beautiful.
means white wave, actually.
Sounds beautiful.
So I live with a lot of fear. And when I was a teenager, I went through the worst depression. I was hospitalized for 3 months. A lot of it was me reacting to family trauma. So I love and forgive my family that I apparently chose. And I love them more dearly than ever, especially my mom. But at the time, there were a lot of codependency, control issues. And I just love them. But it was sad because I kind of reacted to it all. And I may suffer from a chemical imbalance because I was in a bad car accident when I was 17 too. We were almost killed. My brain was shuffled around. So maybe there's something to that, but I know the depths of depression. I've nearly committed suicide a couple times. And that might be a shame, my mom said, because she wouldn't take it lightly.
Well, I can tell you that we grow through these things. We get
Yes,
stronger and we get much wiser.
yes,
Thank you, Jennifer. I want to
Yes.
talk to you guys about something that Jennifer said right at the beginning. When she said that the doctor that was massaging her hands, that she felt that it was the love as much as the cream that was doing the healing. I'm probably singing to the choir, and many of you probably already know this, but in the possibility that some of you don't, I want to tell you that love is essential to life. It isn't an extracurricular activity, and it's not a spectator sport. Love is essential to life. In England, there was a hospital, kind of a nursery that the Catholic sisters ran, and people would come and leave babies on the doorstep, and then they would take them in. And they had quite a few babies in there, and most of them were crying most of the time, and they were changing some diapers and mixing some milk or whatever to feed them, and they were busy, but the little ones were crying and crying, and they had a 90% fatality rate with those little babies. 90% fatality rate. And they figured, well, who knows where they came from? Who knows what kind of diseases they had when they came here? Plus, they were out on the doorstep. They could have been there for a while. So it's not too surprising that 90% of them died. They hired a washerwoman, an older woman who had already raised her kids. So she had a big maternal thing going on. And she came in, and when she saw these little babies crying, she'd go over and pick them up. And the nun said, "Excuse me, but that's not your job." She said, "I can still do my job and keep this little one on my hip." So she'd pick these little ones up and juggle them on her hip and mop or do whatever. And she just kept trading off and picking up these little ones. And the nuns saw that the babies weren't crying as much. And so she said, you know, they need to be loved. Sister, you've got to be loving them right along, or otherwise they're going to get sick. That's the way it is with babies. So the nuns started picking them up and loving them, which you got to know that for those nuns, that was a blessing boy, when you pick up a little baby and put him up against your neck, there's nothing like that. But anyway, so when they started doing that, they had a 90% survival rate. They went from 90% fatality to 90% survival through love alone. In Texas, years ago, there was an organization called the Cancer Research Institute, run by the Simontons. And they wouldn't take just any cancer patients. They wanted cancer patients that had been deemed terminal and that there was nothing else that could be done. I understand that they didn't do any chemotherapy or radiation or anything. And when people came in, they interviewed them. And my understanding is that they asked this question right off. When did you decide to die? Now, if somebody said that to you, I think you'd probably get upset. What the hell are you talking about? If I decided to die, would I be here? I came here so I could live. But they didn't say that. From a guy that worked there that I talked to, nobody ever said that. He said, when did you decide to die? And they went, well, and then they told him that they mostly didn't decide to die. They just decided not to keep living. They just decided to not keep living, to not do it anymore, to not flow as a river, to just stop the flow. They had a 30% success rate among these so-called terminal patients. And what they found, among other things, is that many, if not most, of the people who came there had lost their central love object, be it a husband or a wife or a child or a pet. They'd lost their central love object and didn't replace it. And 6 to 18 months later, had cancer. 6 to 18 months later, had cancer. So what we're talking about is the placebo. And the placebo in this case comes in the form of love. That's why we at Unity are constantly saying, you need to reach out to each other. You need to join these classes. You need to communicate. You need to dare to say, I love you. You need to dare to say, I love you. And people say, well, I can't say I love this person. I hardly even know them. I don't care if you hardly know them. You still love them. I was doing a seminar in Tokyo, and they put me up in these big, enormously lavish suites that I'm there alone. It's just a sense of loneliness when you have this giant suite. Anyway, they have a floor-to-ceiling window, and I was looking out the window one day, and I saw a train hit a man down in a train yard. And he was obviously dead, but nobody stopped. And after a long time, somebody was walking along the platform and looked down, and then they jumped down and went over to him, and then they went back, and then the other people went back, and then eventually they put a kind of a barrier around him so people couldn't look in. And I watched that whole thing. And as I was watching that, I was thinking, did anyone love him? Did anyone love him? Because he wouldn't have stepped in front of that train if somebody loved him. We must have love. We must be loved. We must feel that we're loved. and we must give love. We're going to do breakout room in just a minute, but I want to talk to you for a minute about meditation, because that's where we're going with this class, and that's where we're going next week and the week after and the week after. Waves versus particles. When you focus on a wave into the space, and you desire a thing, and you put your attention on a thing, the electrons and photons and the other subatomic particles appear to make that thing. There's nothing that can't be. It's all in probability and possibility, all of it. Becoming possible, going into the quantum, is what you do when you meditate. Going into the quantum is going into possibilities and turning possibilities into probabilities. That's what Joe's teaching us, is that You Are the Placebo isn't just about healing your canker sores. You Are the Placebo is about changing your life. Because unless you're loved and loving, the placebos won't work. Unless you are flowing with the grace of God, which is the healing power of the placebos won't work. You can't say, all right, I'm going to take this placebo. I hope it'll work. And I'm sure mad at that damn guy that bumped into my car. God, if I could find him. The placebo won't work. You know, I don't speak to my brother anymore. I'm just sick of him. Well, I don't care. But I don't care. The placebo won't work. The placebo only works if you're flowing with the grace of God, flowing with love. So changing our beliefs and changing our perceptions and changing our opinions are all part of the work that we're doing here. And you have to be willing to change. And see, here's the problem. Here's my mind here. And my mind has all these opinions and ideas and thoughts. And my mind knows it's right. Damn it, it's right. I'm right. And now I'm going to try to change my mind using this mind. How can that work? How can I change my mind using the very mind that needs to be changed? I have to go out of my mind. In the next course that we're going to do, you're going to just see how you go out of your mind. But I have to go out of my mind in order to change my mind. That's meditation. That's meditation. So in a minute, we're going to go into breakout rooms. And we're going to, and incidentally, when we come back from the breakout rooms, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about, you're going to be in the breakout rooms for 20 minutes in the breakout rooms. And then when you come back, we're going to talk about Joe's meditation, and we're going to talk about how we get to the next level. And your breakout question is this: how do I find peace in my heart when I feel tense? How do I find peace in my heart when I feel tense?